Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here. In this video, we're going to be doing an overview on the extended teaser trailer for Final Fantasy XIV's next expansion, Shadowbringers. We know that expansion is going to be coming July 2nd now, with early access on the 28th, and as such, every little bit of information we want to dissect, and we just want to start making predictions because a lot of us are very excited for what it looks like the future is going to be bringing. Now, if you haven't seen the extended teaser, I will provide a link in the description. We are only going to be watching the one new scene, which happens about 2 minutes into the teaser, and then we are going to be watching the extended scene, which starts at about 2:49 into the teaser trailer. So let's watch those first, and let's just cut out all the rest and just get right to it.
What sayest thou, Master Matoya? We may accept this fate, or defy it, but we cannot deny it.
Deny? I am not wont to run from my troubles. Until our friend returns, I will hold the line.
This town certainly has changed, and not at all for the better. I'm not going anywhere. I promise you, Minfilia.
All right, and those are the two additional scenes / extended scenes that are available in the new trailer. So there's a lot to unpack there because we've still only seen part 1 of the patch 4.5 main scenario quests. Now, before I go any further with this, slight spoiler warning because we will be referencing those events. So if you haven't done them yet, go do them. Or if you're new to Final Fantasy XIV, making use of any of the campaigns that are going on or about to be going on, then this is all going to be very spoilerific for you. So first of all, let's go back to the scene here at 2 minutes. Now, 2 minutes, 1 second, I guess. 2 minutes, 2 seconds. There we go. So this scene is brand new to the extended teaser trailer. And we know we'll be getting more after patch 4.5 part 2 actually launches, by the way. So this isn't even the final trailer again. Now, I think the first noticeable change here, obviously the scene is completely on fire, so I think that's probably what draws our attention. Our two characters here are actually in the Raktica Greatwood, one of the new areas that's going to be taking place in Shadowbringers. Now, Raktica Greatwood, assumed to be an evolution area, homeland of the Viera, similar to the Golmore jungle, or at least a subsection of the Golmore jungle itself. We have confirmed there will be Viera in this area, and that we've even seen screenshots of cities and whatnot. Now, in the opening keynote, this scene is actually referenced when they show off the zone for the Raktica Greatwood. There's a large tower that is made of wood that they're standing on that is directly shown in a screenshot. And there's a constant question of when this event takes place versus when we actually see the screenshot in game. And that's something that we're just going to have to wait to find out, though, of course, I do have my theories on that as well. Now, the first person we're brought to our attention is someone whose face we haven't actually seen in quite some time, so some of you may not immediately recognize him. But this is none other than Urianger J. You know, the guy you had to go back to the Waking Sands to get all your primal quests for the relic and all that way back when? Yeah, if you don't remember, he took his mask off, or he took his goggles off back in patch 3.4, when we were doing our initial confrontation with the Warriors of Darkness, or I guess our final confrontation with them, until presumably the next expansion. Now, he seems to have gone through a job change. Now, it is worth mentioning that the Scions of the Seventh Dawn aren't traditional in terms of the way they actually use job abilities. A great example of that is Ishtola, who, despite being a conjurer and not a white mage, was able to use Holy, as well as access things such as the Astro Bubble that we eventually got in Heavensward. So they don't follow the conventional rules. However, it's pretty straightforward to say that Urianger J has straight up gone Astrologian on us right here. It's very different from the way that we're used to seeing him. It's much more flamboyant of him, but you can tell based on the scar on the face, as well as his voice acting and his demeanor, that this is indeed Urianger J. Now, if you've done patch 4.5 part 1, you know that Urianger J is one of the characters that's currently out of commission, suffering from an effect known as being called, where basically he's being called from, we don't really know from whom or from when. There's tons of theories about that. But basically his soul was ripped out of his body as part of a side effect of that. So his body is basically a lifeless husk right now. It functions, its heart's beating, its brain is working, but there's no soul in it. So the fact that he's moving around here is very similar to seeing Thancred later in the trailer, who we saw in the first teaser trailer, and we were wondering how he could possibly be functioning. So that question still remains here. There's a lot of theories going on about that, about whether this is Urianger in his actual body, if another Echo user has entered it or has gone through some sort of process, and that's going to be a very important topic when we show our next character that we had revealed. And then it's a question of maybe it's an Urianger from an alternate shard, maybe Urianger has recovered from his situation, or maybe this is our Urianger where he was actually called to, which would make a lot of sense considering some of the other context that we've been given, especially in the most recent opening keynote. So he's on an Astro, and he's talking about fate. He says we can accept it, or we can defy it, but we can't deny it. And he seems to specifically be talking to Master Matoya, which is very strange considering the events that take place just a few seconds later. We see this hooded figure who is, obviously being referred to as Master Matoya. They say they are not one to run from their problems. They will not deny fate. They will stand the line until their friend returns. Now, initially you are led to believe this is a young Matoya, just because of that. But as soon as the hood comes off and you get a better view, you can clearly see it is Y'shtola. Now, her being referred to as Matoya, again, is what leads to a lot of people assuming that they may not be the actual inhabitants of these bodies. A lot of people have suggested that maybe Matoya is not necessarily a name, but is more of a rank, a title. And something has happened to Matoya, or this is an alternate Y'shtola who has been given the title of Matoya. That would be very different from the way that it seems to work in the game currently with Matoya and Louis Sois. Those are their names. They weren't titles. They were rivals, they were friendly rivals that always, were trying to one up each other back in Old Charlan. And it'd be really strange if this was just a title. So I think it's safe to assume something else important is going on here. Again, the idea of Matoya transferring her soul into Y'shtola's husk of a body is something that has come up quite frequently. It would also explain why Y'shtola here appears to be a black mage. Now, while Yoshi P himself kept saying she appears to be a black mage, it has been confirmed through the art panel that happened literally hours after this that they called it the Y'shtola Black Mage design. On top of that, in Dissidia of Final Fantasy NT recently, she did receive the Black Mage stance, and she's been, I guess, sort of reworked into being more of a black mage than a white mage as she was when she was initially released. Now, that being said, there's pretty much room for any of those theories to be correct. We're still very much in the dark in regards to what Shadowbringers is truly about. Yes, we know Garlemald, we know Zodiark, we know the Ascians, but there's a big question of how we get from Part 1 to 5.0, and Part 2 is supposed to be that little gap that's bridged. One of the big theories is, again, this is an alternate shard. Because all the shards are copies of the source, as we've come to know it, it is possible that in another shard, Y'shtola actually was Matoya. I think that the Matoya being in Y'shtola's body thing makes a whole lot more sense for a handful of reasons. One of them would be that I've often theorized that Matoya would eventually make the sacrifice and basically grant her powers to Y'shtola, basically succeeding her. And on top of that, would gain her sight back. One of the big things with Y'shtola is she's been using the ether around her in order to see ever since we got her back in Heavensward. And Matoya's reference that, she's going to kill herself doing that. And Matoya being the old master and, Y'shtola being the young protege who Matoya mentored, it would make sense to go that route. Matoya giving up her soul to help Y'shtola overcome this so that she can, bear the weight of the events that are about to happen. Now, in that process, it's possible that Y'shtola has chosen to take on Matoya's name. And then again, of course, it is also possible Matoya is just inhabiting the body, though as far as we know, Matoya is not actually an echo-bearing individual, so it would have to be done through some other means. It could even be done through some of the Garlean stuff that we've discovered in recent patches, ever since 4.0 first came around. There's a lot of excellent theories, and to me, none of them sound too far out of reach. I think that's great for a discussion point because it really makes us all feel like, we can contribute a little bit to this conversation a little bit more. Whether or not Y'shtola is a black mage, I think that's another thing that maybe he says Y'shtola appears to be a black mage because maybe Matoya is a black mage, which would make sense. In Final Fantasy 1, she's a witch. And ironically enough, in Final Fantasy 1, Matoya is blind and can only see with the crystal eye. And in this case, Y'shtola is blind, and can only technically see using Matoya's crystal eye. So there's a lot of symbolism and characteristics that are similar to Matoya in Final Fantasy 1 that, kind of make Y'shtola the premier candidate to be called Matoya going into the future of Final Fantasy 14. This was one of the most exciting reveals for me from the teaser trailer from a lore standpoint, because it just means we have to unpack so much. One other detail that Yoshida made sure to put some emphasis on is the timeline in which this actually takes place. Now, later when we see the zone in the preview through the opening keynote, we see it, but there's no fires around. It looks like it might be charred a little bit from whenever these events actually took place. But there's often been the theory of Shadowbringers having some sort of massive time skip in regards to when it actually takes place in the Final Fantasy XIV canon. Now, on top of that, there's also the theory that alternate timelines or time travel are going to be important aspects. Now, none of this is confirmed. A lot of this is all just theory, and we're bringing it to light. But it would make sense for an event like this to take place, and for us, the Warrior of Light, we are likely the friend who she is referring to until our friend returns. At this point, we have to probably presume we're the Warrior of Darkness. It kind of makes sense for some time shenanigans to go on there, for us to see this kind of burnt out area. And, maybe it just means we're too late. Will we see an event like this in the game? One would hope so, although the trailers have been known to have events that we don't necessarily see all the way to, especially going back to the Lys and Warrior of Light scene back in 4.0, which we don't get to actually see. It's just alluded to that it actually takes place during that teaser trailer. So again, a lot to unpack here. Why is the Rak'tika Greatwood on fire? What are they defending against? Is it the Calamity? Is it a wave of light? Is it a horde of monsters born from the light? Which is still very much a question, because we've been told in the past that light pretty much erases everything. Who's to say that there aren't light-based void scent that are basically the equivalent of our dark-based void scent? But even in the more recent Encyclopedia Eorzea, there leads to hints that the statues in Amdapor might actually be based on a real being, which might be the being we're seeing the Warrior of Light fight in the trailer itself. So wow, whole lot of lore stuff to unpack just from hearing Y'shtola, Matoya, Rak'tika Greatwood, and seeing Urianger back there. A whole lot of questions and almost no answers. We'll just have to wait for 4.5 Part 2 and 5.0 to actually get any sort of information that confirms any of the theories going on. Which one's your favorite? Pick whichever one sounds the best to you. I can't really say one sounds better to me than the other at this point, because we're just so much in the dark. Now, moving forward, we do get the extended scene with Thancred, who has job changed over to Gunbreaker. Now, we had Alisaie become Red Mage in the previous expansion, and now it seems Thancred is going to be our mascot for the Gunblade-wielding job going into 5.0. Now, again, job changes are always very weird. I expect him to have abilities that aren't entirely belonging to Gunbreaker, but this was basically I say semi-reveal of the job. We did see the Gunblade-wielding job, and it was alluded to back when the first teaser trailer was released, but we didn't really have any sort of confirmation about it. And as soon as they started to show actual gameplay, or I guess I shouldn't say gameplay, in motion action of the Gunblade and Thancred using it, it all of a sudden became very apparent what we were about to get ourselves into, and we do get a little bit of the action here. Now, it does, of course, allude to the way that the job is going to be played. Of course, he is protecting somebody, as you heard earlier. That is indeed Minfilia, and we'll get into that in a second, and that is the worst stop frame I could have possibly picked, I suppose. And he's protecting her. It's all kind of lining up with theories people had in regards to whether or not the gunblade wielding job, Gunbreaker, we now know it's called, was going to be a tank. And it seems that those that did have that theory, they rang true. So he starts fighting this creature, and again, this is another creature from Amdapor, but it appears to be much more alive. Whether or not that's CG magic, or whether or not these are light-based void scent, still left open, but at the moment, we have to kind of assume that they could also just be, I guess filler, kind of like how there's a million Hraesvelgers in the Heavensward trailer. That doesn't necessarily mean that we were going to fight a bajillion Hraesvelgers. It was just the model that the trailer people had on hand and decided to use, and they just used it a lot. That could be the case here. We do see the gremlins from Amdapor. We do see this is the second boss from Amdapor hard mode, and then we of course have the Karibu? I want to say Karibo because of Yu-Gi-Oh! Yeah, the Karibu, which is the person that the statue that the Warrior of Light is fighting. Now, in terms of gameplay here, we don't get to really unpack too much. We did hear that it would play similar to the way that Squall does in Final Fantasy VIII, where they're not going to be using their bullets to attack from range. They're going to be using their bullets to assist their attacks. So you see whenever he swings, he's also firing the weapon at the same time for increased damage. This is getting a little bit too much into job speculation. However, people have often compared this, since the reveal earlier today, to be reminiscent of Dark Arts. And so we are a little bit concerned about that because Dark Arts has not been a very flavorful thing, but there's not really too much to, I guess, unpack gameplay-wise from all of this. More importantly, to try and unpack is where they are, because where they are has been a big question. Thancred mentions the city having changed and not for the better, meaning it's a place that he's been before. And unfortunately, it's very hard to tell with the pace of the action where exactly they are. Unfortunately, the initial image we had when the thing actually comes crashing down was probably our best bet and the best view we are going to get. A lot of people still theorize that this is, one of the ruins, the Sildi ruins under Thanolin or under Ul'dah in particular. It certainly doesn't look like something along the lines of Limsa Lominsa, though the boat side entrance that they take when he first is actually running up does kind of imply that it is something that sits on a shore. If we can watch this right here real quick. We see him running up. I guess it's not really shown exclusively that there is... I kind of took the chains and mistook them for a boat. That scene back there, something in the distance, kind of looks like a boat to me. Also, just the general light suggesting it's some sort of cavern, that there is an exit to the open world out there. Kind of leads you to believe it's more like a cove in a sense like that. But we can't really get any solid details out of it. But this does look very Sildian. If I had to take a guess, I'd still go with under Ul'dah. It would make sense considering that Minfilia herself, that was the last place we saw her before 3.x. It was where the major sacrifice was made in the first place. And Ul'dah has often been the center of a lot of conflict in Final Fantasy XIV. Of course, there's the other theories, it being Ala Mhigo, it being a city that he's been to, but we haven't been. Because Thancred has been someone who has been used as a spy in a sense, especially when it comes to going to Garlemald. Who even knows? Maybe it could be, maybe he's been to Dalmasca or one of the other Evolution areas, and it's just hard to directly tell based on what we're seeing right here. Be sure to throw your guesses on that in the comment section of the video below. Now, of course, the other big drop, this was a major theory that also came true. It made the most sense when we were describing it, even as we came up with alternatives to what could possibly be happening, and that is the reveal that the small, light-bearing child is none other than Minfilia. Now, it's not just Minfilia, however. It is Minfilia in a childlike form. Now, we've questioned, what the importance of Minfilia becoming the voice of Hydaelyn would actually be. And the last time we encountered Minfilia, she actually went with the Warriors of Darkness to their shard to try and stop the flood of light from consuming it. Now, we know that traveling between dimensions regularly means giving up your form, and it's possible that when she went to that shard, she lost the form that we knew as Minfilia, and has now taken this more childlike form, basically starting from scratch. It could also be a symbol of Hydaelyn's weakening light, which would be very odd considering that the entire expansion seems based around a flood of light, which would, be very, very ironic. It's possible Minfilia has separated herself from Hydaelyn because of this conflict as well. But there's a whole lot of, again, just a ton of questions and almost no answers at all. But all we know is this Minfilia very clearly appreciates and respects Thancred, similar to the way our old Minfilia would have as well, and that she is going to be integral to the plot. In the Amano artwork, we see the Warrior of Darkness, shielding a child of light. We have no doubt right now that that child is indeed this one and is indeed Minfilia. There's also some other questions going on in regards to her as a small child, how it actually happened, and does it have any relevance to the Ivalice, the person who is in charge of Ivalice, though we'd like to assume that's Ashelia, not Minfilia. So again, just a crazy amount of stuff to unpack from just a few short scenes, and that's the wonderful thing about this trailer. I want to give credit to not only the people who, developed the trailer and made it, and the fact that we're still getting another one brings me a lot of excitement, but I gotta definitely give a huge shout out to Soken, because he stepped into huge shoes, needing to step up and do the main theme for the expansion after Uematsu kind of set standards for that in the past several expansions. We have Answers, we have Dragon Song, we have Revolutions, we have these amazing things that Uematsu has done, but with his sickness and with his recent absence from composing and kind of passing the torch on to Soken for Final Fantasy XIV, there's a lot of pressure on his shoulders. And while it is very different tonally, I think it completely captures the tone of the expansion that he's going for right here. And I definitely want to give a huge props to him, because that music is making these trailers way more epic than I think they would have been otherwise. I can't imagine certain other themes, the way we've had the previous expansion themes, I can't imagine those working here, and I think Soken's definitely nailed it. But anyway, that's me unpacking everything that I can possibly think of, and I'm sure there's still things that I missed, such as her garb or other details that I'm sure I could definitely get more attention out of. But let me know what you think. Let me know if there's any details from the new extended scenes that you think I missed, what you think about the scenes, and where do you think the story is actually going in Shadowbringers ahead of patch 4.5 part 2, where we will be hopefully getting a few more answers. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share your comments in the description of the video. Go watch that trailer because it's pretty dope watching the whole thing out. And with that, I got to get working on some other videos. So again, apologies for your sub box being very full over the next several days, but with that, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, take care.